Like, subscribe, and comment, because once you step inside this story, there's no turning back. What you're about to hear is darker than fiction ever dared to be. The siren screamed through the frozen air, sharp and metallic, slicing the silence of the Orenburg steppe. Snow swirled in violent spirals as the armored prison transport lurched to a halt behind layers of concrete, steel gates, and watchtowers crowned with floodlights. The red and blue reflections bounced off razor wire like restless ghosts. Inside the van, a man sat motionless, hands cuffed behind his back, eyes covered by a thick black blindfold. He had been told not to look up. He had been told not to speak. He had been told this place erased names. Black Dolphin Prison did not welcome people. It swallowed them. The guards moved fast. Boots hit frozen ground in perfect rhythm. A heavy hand grabbed the man by the shoulder and dragged him forward. He stumbled, nearly falling, and felt the barrel of a rifle tap his spine, a silent warning. Somewhere nearby, a metal door slammed shut with a finality that echoed in his bones. The blindfold stayed on as they marched him through corridors that smelled of disinfectant and old concrete. Every step felt like crossing a line he could never uncross. This was prison number 6, known to the world by a darker name. Black Dolphin, Russia's highest security correctional facility. A place reserved for men officially labeled beyond rehabilitation. Serial killers, terrorists, cannibals, mass murderers. Men sentenced not just to life, but to erasure. What no one outside knew was that something had already gone terribly wrong inside these walls. 3 hours earlier, during a routine cell inspection in Block D, a guard named Sergei Antonov had failed to respond to his radio. When officers forced open the reinforced steel door, they found Sergei collapsed against the wall, eyes open, face frozen in an expression of shock. There was no blood, no visible wounds, just a thin trail of foam at the corner of his mouth and a dropped key ring lying inches from his fingers. Sergei Antonov was 36 years old, a veteran officer, careful, disciplined, the kind of man who survived places like Black Dolphin by following every rule. His sudden death sent a ripple of unease through the prison, the kind that never showed on official reports. Within minutes, lockdown was declared. Inmates were forced face down on their cell floors, hands behind their heads. Lights stayed on. Cameras rolled nonstop. Every corridor echoed with shouted commands and the barking of dogs. But as the hours passed, investigators found something even more disturbing than Sergei's body. One of the most tightly controlled prisoners in the facility was missing. Major Elena Morozova arrived just before dawn. She stood outside the inner gate, breath visible in the freezing air, staring at the massive concrete structure that loomed like a fortress from another era. Elena had spent 15 years investigating violent crimes for the Federal Penitentiary Service. She had seen maximum security prisons. She had seen riots, murders, suicides. But Black Dolphin carried a reputation even among hardened professionals. No escapes, no mistakes. Until now. Inside the administrative wing, the atmosphere was tense and unusually quiet. Officers avoided eye contact. Paperwork lay scattered across desks, half-finished. The warden, Viktor Belov, waited in his office, his normally immaculate uniform creased, his face drawn tight with controlled panic. "We followed protocol," Belov said the moment Elena sat down. "Every movement logged, every door sealed, cameras everywhere. And yet one of your guards is dead," Elena replied calmly, opening her notebook, "and one inmate is unaccounted for." Belov swallowed. Yes, the missing prisoner was identified as Ivan Korolev, age 42, convicted of orchestrating multiple contract killings in the late 1990s. Officially, Korolev was classified as a model inmate by Black Dolphin standards. Silent, obedient, never caused trouble, which made his disappearance impossible. Elena began reviewing footage. Hour after hour of grainy black and white video showed nothing unusual. Corridors empty, cells sealed, guards walking their routes. Sergei Antonov appeared on screen at 2:14 a.m., stopping outside Korolev's cell. He checked the lock. He leaned in, said something unheard. Then, suddenly, he staggered backward, hands clawing at his throat. The screen glitched. Static swallowed the image for 6 seconds. When the feed returned, Sergei was already on the floor. Korolev's cell door was still locked. "That's not possible," Elena said quietly. Belov nodded. "Exactly. The cell was opened later under full lockdown procedures. Korolev was gone. The bed neatly made. No signs of struggle. No hidden tunnels. No broken fixtures. Nothing missing except the man himself. As Elena walked through Block D, she felt it, the weight of unseen eyes. Prisoners lay on their stomachs as ordered, but she could sense their awareness, their patience. These men understood systems. They understood time. Someone inside Black Dolphin had outplayed one of the most secure prisons on Earth, and someone had paid with his life. Elena stopped outside Sergei's cell checkpoint. Forensic teams had finished their work, but the air still felt wrong. She crouched, examining the spot where his keys had fallen. Among them was a slim black tag she didn't recognize. "What's this?" she asked. A nearby officer hesitated. "That doesn't belong to him." The tag was unmarked. No serial number. No official seal. Just a thin strip of matte black plastic, warm to the touch despite the cold room. Elena straightened slowly. In her career, she had learned one rule the hard way. Prisons don't create monsters. They reveal systems that already failed. If Black Dolphin had been breached from the inside, it meant someone with authority, access, or desperation had helped make it happen. As she walked back toward the surveillance room, an emergency alert flashed across the internal monitors. One camera feed from the old maintenance wing flickered to life, a wing officially decommissioned years ago. For less than 2 seconds, the image stabilized. A man stood in the frame. What do you think happens next? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to follow. His hands were cuffed behind his back. A black blindfold covered his eyes. He was being escorted by 2 guards down the sterile white corridor of Black Dolphin, the world's most secure prison. But as senior investigator Elena watched the security feed, her breath caught in her throat. She recognized that walk, the build, the confident posture. It wasn't a new arrival. It was Ivan Korolev, a monster serving a life sentence in solitary confinement. According to every rule, every log, and every locked door in Black Dolphin Prison, that man should not have existed anywhere outside his cell. But there he was, on her screen. Then, the screen went black. No alarm sounded. No explanations followed. The feed was just gone. Elena turned to the warden, her voice low and controlled, but edged with a new kind of fear. "Lock down the entire facility," she said. "No transfers. No communications. No one leaves." The warden hesitated. "Major, if this gets out." "If this gets out," Elena cut in, her eyes fixed on the blank monitor. "It will be my career that ends. It will be this prison. Somewhere deep inside Black Dolphin, behind walls designed to break the most dangerous men alive, someone was moving completely unseen. And whatever twisted game had just begun, it was already claiming lives. When investigators finally forced open the sealed maintenance corridor beneath Block D, what they found waiting in the darkness would change everything they thought they knew about Black Dolphin Prison, and the men who were never supposed to leave it alive. What really happened that day? What dark secret was hidden in the depths of the prison? Hit that subscribe button and follow along as we uncover the mystery of Black Dolphin. The maintenance corridor beneath Block D had not appeared on any modern blueprint. That alone set off alarms in Elena Morozova's mind. As the reinforced door groaned open, a stale breath of air rolled out, thick with rust, dust, and something older, neglect layered over secrets. The flashlight beams cut through darkness, revealing concrete walls scarred with scratches, numbers etched by hands that had never been acknowledged by official records. "This wing was sealed in 2003, Warden Viktor Belov said quietly, as if the walls themselves might be listening. After the fire, Elena didn't respond. She stepped inside, boots crunching over debris. The corridor sloped downward, disappearing into shadow. Electrical cables ran along the ceiling, some newer than others. Someone had been maintaining this place. Recently, they advanced slowly, weapons raised. The silence felt engineered, like part of the prison's design. Every few meters, Elena noticed fresh scuff marks on the floor, boot prints overlapping each other, not chaotic, but deliberate. Organized movement. Halfway down the corridor, they found the first camera. It wasn't prison-issued. The device was small, civilian-grade, bolted into the corner with care. Its red light blinked steadily. Elena felt a chill crawl up her spine. Someone had installed an independent surveillance system inside the most monitored prison in Russia. "Who has access to this wing?" she asked. Belov shook his head. "No one. Officially. Unofficially was another matter. As technicians disabled the camera, Elena noticed a steel door on the left wall. Unlike the others, it was spotless, the hinges recently oiled. She gestured for it to be opened. Inside was a room no larger than a storage closet. A folding table, a chair. On the table, a stack of files neatly arranged. No dust, no mold, no accident. The files were inmate profiles. Not current ones. Archived names. Men who had supposedly died inside Black Dolphin over the last decade. Heart attacks, suicides, natural causes. Elena flipped through them, her expression hardening as patterns emerged. Similar ages. Similar backgrounds. Organized crime. Intelligence ties. Political assassinations disguised as criminal activity. This isn't random, she murmured. A name at the bottom of one file made her stop. Ivan Korolev. But the date of death listed was 8 years earlier. Elena stared at it, then looked up at Belov. Your missing inmate was declared dead before he ever disappeared. Belov's face drained of color. That's impossible. Is it? She replied. Because if Korolev officially died 8 years ago, then the man in that cell was never supposed to exist. Which means someone wanted him invisible. The implications were enormous. Black Dolphin wasn't just housing the worst criminals. It was burying them. Quietly. Permanently. And sometimes, it seemed, resurrecting them. An alarm suddenly blared through the corridor. A localized alert, not a full lockdown. A guard's voice crackled over the radio, tight with panic. We've got movement in Block B. Inmate refusing prone position. He's shouting names. Elena was already moving. Block B housed prisoners under solitary confinement. Men stripped of contact, conversation, and time itself. When they arrived, a single cell door stood open. Inside, an inmate knelt upright, hands raised, eyes wide and wild. Korolev, the man shouted when he saw Elena. He's alive. He never left. Guards rushed in, forcing the inmate to the ground, but Elena waved them off. What do you mean he never left? She demanded. The prisoner's breathing was ragged. They move us at night. Blindfolds. Hoods. Some of us go down. Some come back. Some don't. Korolev was always there. Watching. Learning. Learning what? How to survive the system. The man said, his voice dropping to a whisper. And how to break it. Before Elena could ask more, the prisoner convulsed, foam spilling from his mouth. Medics rushed in, but she already knew. Another death. Another silence. Poison, preliminary reports would later say. A slow-acting compound delivered through food. Controlled. Precise. Someone was cleaning up witnesses. That night, Elena barely slept. She sat alone in the surveillance room, replaying footage, tracking anomalies. Doors that opened milliseconds longer than logged. Cameras that skipped frames. Guards who walked routes too perfectly, never deviating, never noticing. Black Dolphin wasn't just a prison. It was a machine, and machines required operators. Her focus narrowed on a name she had overlooked before, Deputy Warden Alexei Varnin, former intelligence officer, transferred to Black Dolphin after a scandal buried under classified reports. He oversaw logistics, maintenance, and internal security, the decommissioned wing, the unregistered cameras, the archived inmate files, all under his jurisdiction. Elena requested Varnin's personnel file. It arrived thin, too thin, entire years redacted, commendations without context, transfers without explanation. When she confronted him, Varnin smiled calmly, a man used to power exercised in silence. You're chasing ghosts, Major, he said. This place runs on order, not conspiracy. Order doesn't require secret corridors, Elena replied, or inmates declared dead while still breathing. Varnin's smile never faltered. You see chaos because you don't understand necessity. That night, Elena's room was searched. Nothing was stolen. Nothing broken. Just a message left behind on her desk, written on a scrap of prison stationery. Stop digging. She didn't. Instead, she followed the money. Off-the-books budgets. Maintenance expenses routed through shell companies. Payments to private contractors who didn't officially exist. One name surfaced repeatedly, Orloff Dynamics, a security consultancy with deep ties to intelligence services and organized crime. Orloff Dynamics specialized in containment, interrogation, information extraction. Black Dolphin, Elena realized, was not just a prison. It was a laboratory. The men sent here were not simply being punished. They were being studied, broken, sometimes used, sometimes erased. and Ivan Korolev was central to it all. Records showed Korolev had once worked as an intermediary between criminal syndicates and government operatives. He knew routes, names, payment channels. When he outlived his usefulness, he was supposed to disappear. Instead, he learned the system that tried to erase him. At 3:17 a.m., the power flickered. Backup generators kicked in instantly, but the brief blackout was enough. Alarms screamed. Doors slammed. Elena sprinted toward the maintenance wing as reports flooded in. Another body. Deputy Warden Varnin was found in his office, slumped over his desk. No signs of struggle. No wounds. Just a single word carved into the wood beneath his hand. Balance. Elena stood frozen, staring at it. Korolev's signature. A word he had used in intercepted communications years ago. His philosophy. His warning. As investigators swarmed the office, Elena noticed something else. Varnin's computer was still on. A file open on the screen. Live feed access. From a camera that shouldn't exist. The feed showed a narrow corridor, lights flickering. A man walking calmly toward the lens, hands cuffed behind his back, blindfolded. Except the cuffs were open. And as he reached the camera, he stopped, tilted his head slightly, and spoke softly, as if he knew exactly who was watching. "You built a perfect cage," Ivan Korolev said. "You just forgot who teaches the rules." The feed cut. Elena's phone vibrated in her pocket. A single message appeared from an unknown number. "If you want the truth, come alone. Old intake wing. 5 minutes." She looked up at the maze of corridors stretching before her, at the guards rushing, the alarms blaring, the prison unraveling thread by thread. For the first time since arriving at Black Dolphin, Elena felt something she hadn't expected. The sense that she was no longer hunting a fugitive. She was being invited. And whatever waited for her in the old intake wing wasn't just the next clue. It was the heart of the system, and the reason some prisoners were never meant to leave alive. The old intake wing sat at the far edge of Black Dolphin, a relic from an era when prisoners still arrived in daylight and names were written in ink instead of databases. The lights here buzzed weakly, casting long, trembling shadows across peeling paint and rusted bars. Elena Morozova moved alone, as instructed, her footsteps echoing too loudly for comfort. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, but traps, she had learned, were often where the truth hid best. The message on her phone had vanished the moment she read it. No signal, no backup. The prison's systems were cycling erratically now, doors locking and unlocking out of sequence. Whatever Korolev had done, he had done it thoroughly. At the end of the intake corridor, a single room glowed with light. Inside, Ivan Korolev waited. He sat at a metal table, posture relaxed, wrists resting freely on the surface. No cuffs, no guards. His hair was shorter than in his file photos, streaked with gray, his face lined not with age but with calculation. His eyes lifted as Elena entered, sharp and knowing. "You came," he said calmly. "You murdered a deputy warden," Elena replied, keeping her distance. "And several inmates." Korolev smiled faintly. "I exposed a system that murders every day. The difference is paperwork." Elena didn't argue. She'd seen enough to know he wasn't entirely wrong. "You were declared dead," she said. "Why stay?" "Because death was the point," Korolev answered. "Once they killed me on paper, I became useful again. Invisible men are always useful." He leaned back slightly. Black Dolphin wasn't built to hold monsters. It was built to store inconvenient truths. Men like me carried those truths. When governments change, when alliances rot, when secrets age poorly, they need a place to put the evidence. "And Orlov dynamics?" Elena asked. Korolev's eyes darkened. "The cleaners. They came in under the guise of security reform. What they really ran was extraction. Interrogations without oversight. Experiments in psychological collapse. They wanted to know how much pressure it took to erase a man completely. And Varnin helped them," Elena said. "He was the gatekeeper," Korolev replied, "until he forgot which side of the gate he stood on." Elena stepped closer. "You orchestrated all of this. The cameras, the poisonings, the blackouts." Korolev nodded. "I learned patience here. Learned the rhythms. Learned that systems only appear unbreakable to those who don't live inside them." "Why now?" she pressed. "Why expose it?" Korolev met her gaze. "Because the program was ending. Too many deaths. Too much risk. They planned to shut the wing down permanently. Erase everyone inside it. Including me." Silence stretched between them, heavy and charged. There are files, Elena said slowly. Evidence. Names. Korolev smiled again, but this time there was no warmth in it. Of course there are. The question is whether you're willing to carry them. He reached under the table and slid a small data drive toward her. Elena hesitated, then picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have. This contains everything, Korolev continued. The black budgets. The contractors. The orders signed by men who will deny knowing this place exists. If you release it, Black Dolphin becomes a scandal that can't be buried. And you? Elena asked. Korolev stood. I become what I was always meant to be. A problem. Before she could respond, the lights flickered violently. The distant thud of heavy doors echoed through the wing. A voice boomed over the intercom, unfamiliar and cold. All units, initiate lockdown protocol Omega. Elena's blood ran cold. Omega isn't a standard protocol. Korolev nodded grimly. It means burn the cage. The walls trembled as vents hissed open. A sharp chemical smell filled the air. Gas? Elena asked. Not lethal, Korolev said. Just enough to put everyone down long enough to clean house. He moved fast, crossing the room and prying open a concealed panel in the wall. Behind it was a narrow passage, barely wide enough for one person. This leads to the river access, he said. Maintenance boats. Elena shook her head. I'm not running. Korolev paused, studying her. You think staying saves you? This system doesn't spare witnesses. I'm not the witness, Elena replied, holding up the drive. I'm the courier. Korolev's lips twitched. Then you'll need time. He stepped back from the passage and slammed the panel shut, sealing it from the inside. What are you doing? Elena demanded. Korolev turned toward the door as boots thundered closer. Balancing the scales. He reached for a control box near the table and smashed the cover. Sparks flew as he rewired it with practiced hands. You could come with me, Elena said urgently. Korolev shook his head. I've already escaped. This is just the part where I make sure they can't follow. The door burst open. Armed response officers flooded the room, weapons raised. Korolev stood calmly between them and Elena, hands raised. Ivan Korolev, the lead officer shouted. Get on the ground. Korolev smiled one last time at Elena. Remember, he said softly, cages don't work when everyone can see the bars. Then he slammed his palm down on the exposed wiring. The explosion was controlled but violent. Lights shattered. Alarms died mid-scream. The intake wing plunged into darkness. Elena woke hours later in the infirmary. Official reports said a gas malfunction had caused a temporary blackout. Deputy Warden Varnon's death was ruled a heart attack. Ivan Korolev died in the explosion, his body too damaged for confirmation. The files Elena submitted vanished into internal review. Within a week, Black Dolphin returned to normal operations. Within a month, Elena was reassigned. No explanation, no farewell. But the data drive hadn't been the only copy. 3 months later, investigative journalists across Europe published a series of stories about secret detention programs. Names were named. Contracts exposed. Orloff Dynamics dissolved overnight. Black Dolphin was placed under international scrutiny. Officially, the worst abuses were blamed on rogue actors. Unofficially, everyone knew better. Elena watched the coverage from a small apartment far from Moscow. Her phone buzzed with a final message from an unknown number. Balance restored. For now, she deleted it, knowing it didn't matter. Because some systems never truly shut down. They just wait. And somewhere, behind reinforced walls and forgotten corridors, the cage remembers. If this story kept your heart racing, you're not ready for what comes next. Stay close. Subscribe. The truth has a way of resurfacing when you least expect it.